Hello, and welcome to Way Too Serious, the show where we get way too serious and spend way too much time talking and thinking about things that in the grand scheme of life just really don't matter. I'm Kurtis. With me is my brother, Tony. Tony, how's it going?
Not bad. What's up?
Not a lot. But so if you came over from Tony's show, 22MWU, then we talked about what we're going to do. And if you found us on your own, let me just give you a brief rundown. This is our first episode. And every week, or every 2 weeks really, we're going to have a topic and we're going to talk a little bit about it. Actually, this first episode, we're getting right into it with a big topic, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's so big, we're actually going to split into 2 episodes and give you something for this week and next week. Every 2 weeks, we'll release a show and we'll have a new topic, and the show will kind of depend on the topic. So it's going to be a little loose, and we're kind of going to figure it out as we go. But if you listen to 22MWU, Tony and I both like to talk about movies, and this is mostly what we're going to talk about. Maybe every once in a while we'll get into some TV or something else, but we're mostly going to talk about movies. And it's just we're going to get a little more detail than we get on 22MW. Plus, it'll give me a chance to talk about some movies that were just ones that Steve didn't want to see.
Yeah, because you never get a chance to talk on 22MW.
That's right. Well, that's only for like the last couple of weeks, but okay.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, I'll probably still co-host with Tony from time to time. If you and definitely go check out Tony's show if you didn't come here from there. Before we get started, though, we're gonna hold up. We're gonna do our hold up segment each week. We'll talk about something hopefully relevant to the topic and see if it holds up. And this week we're just jumping right into it with the movie that kicked it all off, the original Iron Man from 2008. Directed by Jon Favreau. Almost forgot that there. Jon Favreau and starring Robert Downey Jr. So, Tony, you want to give us your thoughts first?
Yeah, sure. This movie actually stars Terrence Howard. Anyway, so I think this movie definitely holds up for me. I actually think I still have my same problems that I've had with it all along, and I guess we'll get into that in a little bit. But it's this world that's been created within these movies is so enjoyable to me, and as I watch them back, and I've seen them a couple times, some more than others, the way they blend together and the way they've created this universe just totally works. I totally dig it, and again, I'll get into this a little bit more later. It kind of makes me even flip-flop on how I feel about certain ones compared to other ones. But for me, this one definitely holds up. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll talk more about it in a minute, but as we kind of get into each of the films, I think we're going to pretty much talk about all of those, or most of them. But see, this is the problem with the holds up segment. This is our first time doing it. Holds up can mean a lot of different things and can apply to movies in different ways. I think we're going to find out as we do this. This was Tony's idea for a segment. I really think it's kind of interesting. So, when the 2 movies that came out this year were Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't know, it's tough to say this movie holds up. I like this movie a lot. I really like it. It's probably top 4, maybe top 3. It might be 3 for me after those. But those 2 movies were so good and did a lot of the things that this movie didn't do well. That I'm real close, but I'm going to say it doesn't hold up because it's a real close, and I'm only comparing it to the 2 movies that came out this year. If we did it next year and Avengers 3 or Avengers 2 is a stinker, then maybe I'd go back to holds up. But I'm going to say it doesn't hold up. Okay. Still a great movie, though. I have a lot of problems with it. We'll talk about that in a second. But each week we're going to kind of lay it out for you. We're just going to kind of give you our preconceived notions and biases. A lot of times when you do something like this, people think it just helps to know where you're coming from, kind of cuts off some of the arguments that other people may have. So we're just going to kind of let you know. And I'll start it off, Tony, and you can just kind of follow after me. Is when I first heard about this, the whole Iron Man thing, I didn't know a lot about Iron Man, but I knew enough. Tony Stark, alcoholic, flying suit, all that stuff. I didn't really get it, but then I saw the movie, and I really enjoyed it. And then when they came up with the whole Avengers thing, I was super cynical about that. I did not think that was going to work, especially when they started talking about like Thor. I thought that was going to be stupid. And I was totally wrong. They've done a fantastic job, and we talked a little bit about it on 22MW a couple weeks ago, but fantastic job. So when I'm talking about these movies, I'm not just some fanboy who came in wanting to love them. I didn't think they were going to work, and they've proven me wrong. So, what was your thoughts before they really got into it?
When I saw Iron Man again, I had my problems with it, and for me, those problems at that time with just that standalone movie led me to not really be digging this whole thing they were going for. But what I did say all along was, I think it was after Thor came out, I said, well, these movies may not be that great, but once like the Avengers movie comes out, like it'll be really cool to take a look back at where these characters came from and have a little reference in this universe that it's creating. And then when I saw the Avengers, and I just wasn't a fan, I think, and again, we'll get into this as we go through the movies, I kind of was like, oh, I guess I was wrong. I mean, I know a lot of people disagreed with me then, disagree with me now, but at the time, that's how I felt. And but this year, through Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier, which you can hear my review on 22MWU, that movie kind of turned it around for me. And I enjoy these movies. I'd seen all of them even prior to this because I like superhero movies. I do like the genre. I always wanted to see them succeed.
All right, well, let's get into it. And let's just run through, to start out, let's just run through the films. We'll maybe talk about some of the other stuff that's part of this universe coming up, but we've seen all these movies. I've seen all of them except Thor 2 at least twice. How about you?
I've seen all of them but Cap 2 and Guardians twice, at least. I would have liked to have seen those two again, but I just didn't have the time.
Well, we'll get to those coming up. So let's just kind of go through them. I'm sure we'll spend more time on some than others. And let's go back to Iron Man from 2008. And like I said, I really like this movie. If it's on, I'm going to watch it. The problems with it are, well, first of all, the thing it does real well is this is a great origin story. A lot of times you get why they became a superhero or how they became a superhero. You don't always get both. This totally gave us both and did a great job of giving us both. It really showed us how and why Tony Stark became Iron Man. It was really well done from that respect. Where it falls apart is the villain, who, thank God, is played by Jeff Bridges, because otherwise that would just be a terrible villain. And the fact that his plan really makes no sense, and the whole kind of end is just a big robot fight. And it's well done for the most part. Some of the CG in this movie doesn't look as good as most recent entries, but it kind of falls apart at the end just because the story after the origin part doesn't really make a lot of sense. But obviously great casting to get Robert Downey Jr. And I think one of the things we're going to talk about as we go through these movies is how great they've done with the casting in all of these films, or most all of these films. Yeah,
I think the movie does a great job of getting you into this character that most people knew nothing about. Out of the ones that have solo movies, the Iron Man's the one I knew the least about going into the movie. And even though some of it was a bit annoying. I mean, how many scenes of Tony Stark driving a car fast I really need to see? Yeah, they kind of beat you over the, okay, I get it. He's a bad boy rebel. I get it.
I think he likes broads, too.
Yeah, I think he likes broads, yeah. And I felt like this being the first time a lot of people were getting a glimpse at Tony Stark and Iron Man, they really needed to establish him as a hero. And having a death ray that he tells someone to go off to, potentially kill himself, but more importantly, kill Jeff Bridges' character, I just felt like it lacked something. And they try and save the ending, I think, by where he's pretending not to be Iron Man, and then he's like, screw it, I'm Iron Man. And it's funny and it works, but just the ending and the killing of the villain, it didn't establish this very heroic superhero for me. What I did like was that whereas like I fell in love with Spider-Man and Batman as a kid, kids I saw fell in love with Iron Man the same way, and I thought that was pretty cool. It's a hero.
Yeah, my kid loves Iron Man, and if he were born 10 years ago, he probably wouldn't even, especially at his age, wouldn't even know who Iron Man was. All right, well, the next movie was The Incredible Hulk, and I'll just come out and say it. This is my least favorite movie in the bunch.
Easily.
This movie is it's so bad. It's not even bad. It's just boring. It's just boring. I like Ed Norton. He's not good in this. I like what's the bad guy's name? Not
William Hurt.
Not William Hurt.
Eli
but
Roth.
Eli Roth. Yeah, I like all those people. None of them are good in this movie. It's just not good. I don't even really have anything to say about it, just because I'm that bored. I've seen it twice. Maybe saw it a third time, kind of on the side TV or something while I was playing a video game or something. I really have nothing to say about it. I don't even think it's worth talking about.
Do you mind if I do?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Save me here, because I got nothing to say on it.
Okay, so I have a little bit. This movie is really bad. And again, I think I could give it even a little leeway on its badness if it wasn't for the recasting. I hate recasting, especially of main characters. And since Mark Ruffalo is now the Incredible Hulk, this movie just kind of... I don't even really consider it in this universe.
Yeah, you can throw it out.
You can absolutely throw it out without
it's good. It's a good thing that it wasn't good, because if it had been good, you would have a hard time throwing it out.
Right.
And you don't. You just say, I don't need it.
There's the CGI in this is bad to me. There's a lot of and not just the Hulk. That's going to be tough to do. But he's for a long fight scene, he's holding these two pieces of shrapnel, and they look like crap. And then
a lot of fire, CGI fire.
Oh, and then the most annoying part about that is this fire breaks out, and then instantly it starts raining too. It's just kind of okay, yeah, I guess that's happened in the history of the world. It's just kind of ridiculous in this movie. And I mean, the acting's not terrible, but there's nothing that at any point gets me into this movie. They really skate over the origin of what exactly happened. And maybe they did that because of the Eric Bana movie. I don't know. Maybe they just didn't want to do a complete origin story, and I don't know that it was necessary. But they
kind of cover it in the opening credits. If you it's very, you know what I'm talking about, right? They kind of do a comic book, but you can barely see it. If I remember correctly, I haven't watched this movie in a while, but you can barely see it. It's very lightly put on the screen, but it kind of does the back screen. I never knew. I mean, I guess it's not, because the first Hulk is not considered part of the MCU, but I always wondered if when this came out, if it was supposed to be a sequel to that movie or what. It doesn't really matter, because, like we said, you could just get rid of this, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe is much better for it, recasting or not. Up next is Iron Man 2, and this is not my favorite in the bunch, but I don't think it's as bad as some people say. Again, this is going to be a recurring theme. As much as I do love these movies have a real villain problem, and that's because all the best Marvel villains are in either X-Men, like Magneto, or they're part of the Spider-Man universe, which they don't have rights for. So they don't even have some of the best, at least the most well-known. I don't read the comics, so I can't say they're the best, but this has a real villain problem. They have two villains, I guess. Can you even consider Hammer? Can you consider him a villain? I mean, you have two villains. One who is no threat to Iron Man at all, and one who has maybe 3 or 4 lines of dialogue. So also, I love Don Cheadle. That is terrible recasting.
Yep, I agree. I like Terrence Howard much better.
I mean, if they're going to recast it, look, love Don Cheadle. He is not a superhero. Sorry. And I know you could say that about a lot of people who didn't work out for him. The fact they're going to bring him into Avengers kind of disappoints me, because he looks so goofy in that suit. I don't know. Love the guy. He shouldn't be in it. But this still has some decent action in it. Of course, it has Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, which is... I'm sorry, I just don't ever really get tired of Robert Downey Jr. being Robert Downey Jr. I probably will at some point, but it hasn't happened yet. So I still kind of like this movie. Not the best in the bunch, though, by any means.
Yeah, when I saw this movie the first time, I remember I went to the midnight showing of it, and I was in Syracuse, and I left the movie theater kind of feeling like Mickey Rourke had really ruined this movie. His accent.
He wasn't good in it.
I get it. He was like fresh off The Wrestler, and everyone was high on Mickey Rourke, and that's a great movie, and he's fabulous in it. Don't get me wrong, but this wasn't a hit for him. Hammer was the much better bad guy in this movie. He actually was despicable, and
but he was no threat. He was no threat.
True, but a better acted villain nonetheless.
Yeah.
And I wasn't high on the movie. I watched it the other day in preparation for this podcast, and I gotta say I flipped on it. To me, this movie was really funny. It's got RDJ being RDJ at his best, I think. The Senate scene is one of my favorite scenes in any of these movies.
It's really good.
To me, this movie just totally worked, and it's in my top 4 for sure, I would say.
Wow, you like it way better than I do. And a lot of people don't like it. I think it's considered one of the worst, but
yeah, normally people do put it towards the bottom.
But I got no problem. I'm kind of the same way. I think the first time I saw it, I wasn't that high on it, and on rewatchings, I've come to enjoy it a little bit more.
But again, kind of like I was saying, I realized that I'm flip-flopping, and I was talking to guys that I talked to on my show, 22MW, and they were like, "You're a flip-flopper," and I'm like, well, these movies have kind of forced me to do that because they've created this universe, and you're just seeing different aspects of it. And again, once you kind of like a character, it's easier to watch a lesser good movie and it work for you if you like that character now. Like
Absolutely.
after seeing Cap 2, the first Avenger is a much better movie, I think, because I'm a big fan of Steve Rogers at that point.
Well, we'll get to that in a second, but first we're going to talk about Thor. And I did not see Thor when. Again, I mentioned earlier, when they said they were bringing Thor into this, I thought that was going to be stupid. I thought it was going to ruin the whole thing. And I didn't see this movie until right before the Avengers came out. I was like, well, I got to see this movie. So I got it on Netflix, and I watched it. And I think lower expectations kind of saved this movie for me. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. I didn't love it. It's toward the bottom for me. Both Thor movies are. We'll talk about the other one later. But it's not bad, and then the best part of it is it sets up who is pretty much the only, at least until 2014, is the only decent villain in this bunch, which is Loki. Loki is by far the best villain in these movies. Tom Hiddleston is great as that character. And it was kind of funny seeing him. The fish out of water thing's been done to death, but it was kind of funny. Again, great casting to get Chris Hemsworth to play him. He does a great job playing what is really a ridiculous role. It's the Norse Thunder God. And this movie did something that Guardians of the Galaxy didn't do, and we're going to talk about that one, which was it explained how it related. I know you're rolling your eyes at me, not just because I can see you, but because I know you are anyway. It explained how it related to the universe. So, appreciated that. Like that backstory there.
Greedy.
And it's again toward the bottom, but still, I've seen it like 3 times now, and it's not bad at all for a movie that's about the Norse god of thunder coming to Earth and interacting with superheroes.
I have very little to say about this one. I actually, when we get to Thor: The Dark World, I think I'll have more to say about this one, just in comparing and talking about the two together. This movie's towards the bottom with me. It's either 2 or 3 from the bottom, that is. Second worst or third worst. And it's just okay. It's got some interesting parts. I actually kind of like Idris Elba's character in this a lot, even though he's got a small part. I just think what he does is
He's
great.
a sexy man.
And there you go. And that's not a drop. That was live. So...
you should make it a drop.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So I like Loki is hands down the best villain from these movies, but I think we see a trend going out through these movies, especially in the initial movie of each character. Is you have a villain that is pretty much just the same as the superhero, but evil as opposed to good. I mean, in Iron Man, you have the guy in the suit, and these two are brothers, and And I guess that's one thing I really have to complain about with this movie is like the brothers, like they don't get along, and like I guess you find out they're not real brothers or whatever, but like the way they fight isn't like brothers. I don't think and I guess they're from a different world, so you can throw that in there. But I have 3 brothers, and I know what it's like to fight with them.
Loki never just annoys the crap out of Thor until Thor beats him up, and then runs and tells Odin that Thor beat him up.
Exactly. Nothing like that happened in this movie. I will say though that me and Curtis this Christmas will have made it 10 years without throwing blows. So happy anniversary.
It was close a couple Christmases ago.
All right.
Another story for another day, though. All right, so now we're gonna move on to Captain America: The First Avenger, and I gotta say, when this movie came out, it did pretty well on Rotten Tomatoes. I think most people liked it. For whatever reason, every one of my friends who saw this movie hated it, and not only did they hate it, but I still to this day get crap for how much I liked this movie. I really liked it a lot. I still do. I thought Chris Evans is great in it. He's great in Cap 2, too, when we talk about that. Which I thought it was a little bit different role from him. He usually plays kind of the cocky guy, and he's playing this more, humble Boy Scout, and I think he does a great job. I totally buy it. The scenes where he's the smaller version, I mean, you can tell they've kind of, put that tint on it to make it look old. It totally works. It looks good. You believe that he's this little scrawny guy who becomes this big guy. I do think they wasted Red Skull in this movie just because he is one of the bigger villains they have, and no one's ever dead, and we're going to talk more about that later, and what a problem that is. But they wasted Red Skull on it pretty much, and that's really my only negative for it. I love this movie. It's 3 or 4 for me. It's really good. I never get tired of it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, this one's middle of the pack for me, but I do really like it. Don't get me wrong. And I especially liked... the first time I did see it, I was like, ho-hum, whatever. But, I don't know. Revisiting it totally works. I watched it right before I went to go see Captain America Winter Soldier, and it got me ready for the second movie. And then I've seen it since then in preparation for this podcast, and I dug it just about as much. And it's a very solid movie. I guess my problem going into it was Chris Evans was, I didn't like that he was Johnny Storm and now he's Steve Rogers. That bothered me, and maybe that's something stupid.
It bothered me for like 3 seconds, and then I was like, he is great in this. Actually, one of my friends one of the ones who gives me the most crap, and I have like 4 or 5 friends who literally give me crap for liking this movie. One of them says that this is what drives me nuts. That Chris Evans as Captain America is the worst acting he's ever seen. And to me, that's just so ridiculous.
Has he seen Tommy Wiseau?
I don't know, but he said... The guy also said... to take it with her, the guy also says that... I can't think of his name, but the guy who plays Joffrey on Game of Thrones is the next worst actor. To which my comment is, yes, the guy who makes everyone hate him and has created the single most hated character in all of cinema and TV, except for Brian Koo, is a terrible actor. Yes, you nailed it. Like, maybe he's not going to win the Academy Award, but the guy's made this character where... We're getting on the Game of Thrones, so I'm gonna stop there. But yeah, that just tells you where that guy's coming from. So,
not the sharp.
I think Chris Evans is great as Captain America. I love him in it. I totally forgot about the Johnny Storm stuff, and I don't care about those movies. Those movies are terrible. When they reboot them, I'm sure we'll talk about them. But I don't care about that. He's great in it.
Yeah, I agree, and that's one of the things I got out of the movie we're going to talk about next. And I guess I'll just transition into the Avengers.
This movie does a great job setting up the movie we're going to talk about next, which is the Avengers.
So, the Avengers is where I started to like the Steve Rogers character, and I didn't like a lot about this movie. I thought that it and this should have no impact on my decision of how I feel about this movie, but it did annoy me how ridiculous people were. Like, they were like, this is the greatest superhero movie of all time. Like Batman Begins wasn't a movie. It drove me nuts. And I I thought that it was formulaic at parts, like where there's just like, for no really good reason, just because they wanted to have an action scene, they have Thor and Iron Man fight, and it's just kind of like...
Since some action beats.
Exactly, and it feels forced, and it just kind of makes them both look mediocre, and again, with all these new kind of heroes that you're trying to sell to these people, I thought that they should have made them more heroic, and that kind of took away from it. As I've talked about on other podcasts in the past, I think that Black Widow and Hawkeye are just such a waste. You're building a team, and you got Iron Man, the Hulk, somebody as smart as Steve Rogers, and able as Steve Rogers, and then you got these just two lameoids. And
I think they folded them in best they could, and that's my whole thing. Is I don't know how much better this movie could have been, because like I said, when I heard they were going to do this, the entire premise was crazy to me, and I thought there's no way it would work. And it worked pretty good. I will say, the more times I see this, the further it goes down my list, and I still really like it a lot. I love Josh Whedon, but some of the dialogue in this movie is terrible. I think he writes better stories and characters than he writes dialogue, and I like a lot of stuff he does. So love a lot of the stuff he does, but this movie still does it for me, though. I still think the end is awesome. Yeah, there's some problems with it. My biggest problem with it is the Phantom Menace thing, where all the robots just kind of die at the end. But I really thought that when this movie came out, they brought these characters together about the best they could, including Hawkeye and Black Widow. Like they gave, at least Black Widow, they like really gave a reason she was there. Hawkeye maybe got not so much,
and he hasn't gotten any love in any movie. I don't like. No,
not really. Which I think Jeremy Renner's pissed about, but I guess we'll find out next summer.
Well, he's like, people are dying to give me franchises. He's like, Tom Cruise gave me this franchise, Matt Damon gave me this franchise, and y'all won't even give me anything in these movies.
He made me a bad guy for 2/3 of the movie. Okay. So, I mean, I guess I can see it with Hawkeye, but I think they worked Black Widow in there pretty nice, and she's worked in well in all... She's been in, 3 movies now? They've worked her in pretty well in all 3 of those.
Gotcha.
Anyway.
So... the one thing that did work for me the first time I watched it, it obviously doesn't work anymore, was I actually was interested to see if Iron Man was going to make it out alive or whatever. I think they kind of do this thing with Robert Downey Jr.
No, that drove... They already had announced Iron Man 3, so it totally... that was one thing I hated about it, is when that movie came out, I was like, well, they've already announced Iron Man 3 starring Robert Downey Jr., so I know he's not going to die here.
Oh, okay. Well, I was on a different continent, and I didn't get that news, so for me it really worked.
Well, for me it didn't, and I mean that's a huge problem, and maybe we should just go ahead and talk about that.
Okay.
Death in this universe means absolutely nothing, and you can take that for a positive or a negative. Positive, that's pretty much how it works in comic books. No one ever stays dead forever. Negative, you keep killing people. Nick Fury, Iron Man, Loki, everyone, Captain America. I mean, how many characters have died either they really wanted you to think they died, or it was like, well, even though you know he didn't, we're going to kind of try to make you think he did. I mean, it's like 5 or 6 people. There hasn't been one ultimate overall death on the good guy side.
Yeah, and that, eventually that just beats you up to where you don't even care anymore. I mean, what do you, if they're going to live through it, it's a lot like movies like Moulin Rouge and Kick-Ass, where the narrator is, describing his death to you, and you're like, well, you're describing it to me, I can hear you, so I don't really think you're going to die. And that's just kind of what they're producing through doing that. And that is a flaw.
Just the way they have this universe set up, though, and then they have movies like through 2028 or whatever, they're going to have to kill some people off, and they're going to have to maybe kill Robert Downey Jr. off and give someone else that role. Make someone else be Iron Man, either another character. I don't think they're going to recast him, but we'll find out. But they're going to have to kill some people off to get these movies to go on. But when they die, no one's going to care, because everyone we've seen die in this universe comes back to life. Right. So you'll never really feel that they're dead.
Agreed. They seem to really have a good grasp on it. I don't think I've been beaten up with that too much yet, so maybe they know what they're doing. I really got trust Kevin Feige. He actually is really good at this, planning this story out. Whether he's just fooling people for now or not, I don't know. It's been successful in my opinion.
Yeah, it has. You can't argue with him too much. It's definitely been more hits than misses. So, and again, that's what happens in comic books. People die and they're never really dead. So,
and it's one thing. In comic book, but not in cinematic universe. I think that has to go away.
Well, I think it's pretty much too. I think they've done it so many times now that it's kind of too late for that. But we'll see. They've proven me wrong many times. Maybe they'll come up with some way to really make it hit home when someone dies for real or is at least dead for more than one movie. So,
and they're always good to just write a death ray into any movie. So maybe Iron Man gets caught by one of those.
All right. Well, speaking of, did you have anything else on Avengers?
No, I think
I said all I wanted to say about it.
I'm good.
Okay. So that speaking of Iron Man, that brings us to Iron Man 3, which may be the last Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man. He'll be in Avengers 2 and Avengers 3, but as of now, there is no Iron Man 4 on the docket, unless they're trying to pull a fast one. So, I really like this movie. It wasn't perfect. I don't read the comics, so I didn't really care. What can we spoil these up to? The end of 2013 or what?
Yeah, I think through Dark World we're good to spoil.
Okay. I didn't really care that the Mandarin was someone else. I know a lot of people hated that whole thing, and they've even tried to go back and fix it with one of the shorts. That maybe there is a real Mandarin out there, although that really goes against what Guy Pearce told us. But whatever.
Well, I think you could. I think that's easily arguable. The two people that mentioned that, well, he says he's the Mandarin, and then Trevor also says there is no Mandarin. And I think both of those people were in circumstances where they're not maybe the most trustworthy people. So I think you could easily ride around it.
Fair enough.
But again,
like I said, I didn't even care about that. I thought it was funny. When that little twist came, I thought it was funny. That was actually one of the parts I liked about the movie. The part of that I didn't like is I didn't think Guy Pearce was a good villain, and I thought that whole I turn into fire thing was stupid, and it really. Like that's another thing, they didn't really explain how that worked, and like can you die from that or not? Because I guess eventually he died. It took like 6 or 7 tries, but then Pepper, we're going off on a rant here, but getting way too serious on this. But I didn't really like that whole, but the end with all the suits, that was real cool. That was, they're always trying to up the next ending. This was one of the few where they didn't blow up a city at the end. They just blew up a big oil tanker. And it was still a cool ending. So you don't have to blow up an entire city to have an awesome ending in a comic book movie. Take note, Marvel Cinematic Universe and everyone else. You don't have to do it, because that ending was pretty cool. Yeah, he sucked as a villain, but all those suits showing up and fighting were super awesome. I thought that's one of my favorite parts of all the MCU, is seeing all those different Iron Man suits fight.
Yeah, this movie, when I left the theater, I thought was awesome. And again, at this point, I still wasn't just a huge fan of this, but it had so much of Robert Downey Jr. being Robert Downey Jr. for the second act that it was just so great. And so many people are down on this movie, and it does have a much different feel than the Jon Favreau directed previous ones.
Absolutely, yeah. You can tell it's a different director, even if you didn't know for sure.
And, it's weird to add in, like, narration in the third movie. Like, I don't know, stuff like that.
They worked in why that was.
Okay,
though. It wasn't
check.
just...
Yeah, I'm with you. They did work that in the post-credit sequence.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, it still just felt like a completely different movie. And for me, in this case, it didn't work. I'm not ready to move on yet, but when we talk about the Winter Soldier, it feels like a much different movie than the first Avenger as well, but it totally works. Whereas this one, that's my biggest problem with it, is that it doesn't feel like the other two. It feels like they just completely went off the rails with it. It has some great Robert Downey Jr. stuff. I like the kid. The Mandarin thing, I can actually understand why people are upset with it. But personally, I'm not upset with it because I didn't read the comics. I didn't understand how important he was once somebody pointed out, like, what if they had done that with the Joker in a Batman movie? I'm like, okay, hold up, that's a party foul, you know. So
no, I get it too. I always say, like, I'm a big Star Wars fan, not as much a Star Trek fan, although I do like Star Trek stuff and I've seen a lot of it, but I'm not like super passionate about it. So I know when the new Star Trek movies came out, people were like, well, you know, you can't mess with this. And I was like, I really didn't have a problem with it. I thought they were okay movies that I actually enjoyed watching, especially the first one. The second one had some issues, but that's another topic for another day. But I can understand, because when the Star Wars prequels came out and ruined Star Wars for me, didn't really ruin Star Wars for me. That's hyperbole. But I can understand where people come from for sure when things that they really love are maybe taken a different way. I do have to say, though, and again, I don't read the comics, I know, but in comic books, I mean, it's probably been done in comic books. Comic books are there's very loose canon. They've done it all, whether it's what-ifs or retcons or whatever. So, I mean, I don't think you get too upset about it, but like you said, I understand the whole Joker analogy is a good one. So I get what people are upset, but yeah, it didn't bother me at all. I really liked the boy in the movie, too. I thought those scenes were cool. They had a good little chemistry there. That was funny. It's not my favorite in the group, just because I had some issues with it, like I said, especially the Aldrich Killian character and a couple other things, like the end where he blew up all the suits and took the thing out of his chest. I didn't really like that, but maybe that'll play a factor in Avengers coming out next year, and we'll see. If it doesn't really factor into that, which I don't understand how it's going to, then that's going to be kind of weird and probably rub me the wrong way, but we'll see.
Well, it actually does kind of make sense to how it would play into, you know, I can't come up with the guy's name off the top of my head, but the guy that voices Jarvis through these movies is going to be playing Vision.
Paul Bettany, I think his name is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's going to be playing the Vision.
So it's imagined that that whole thing will kind of play into him being put into this human form.
Well, also, I mean, it's kind of speculation, but the Ultron, who in the comics was created by Hank Pym, is pretty much, I think, been verified. It's going to be created by Tony Stark, which kind of makes sense if you know a little bit about Ultron, how that's going to work out. But we won't spoil anything for anyone, especially since we don't really know. So.
True that.
All right, anything else on Iron Man 3?
I just want to finish by saying that originally I thought this was the best of the Iron Man movies for the reasons I stated, but in retrospect I actually think it's the worst. But I do enjoy all three of them.
I enjoy all three as well, but for me it goes 1, 3, 2. So
I think I'm either 1, 2, 3 or 2, 1, 3. The first two are pretty close for me.
All right. So next up is Thor: Dark World. Like I said, I've only seen this movie once, so I may not have a ton to say about it. I didn't rewatch it for this. I didn't have time. I probably should have, but I wasn't too excited about it because when I saw it, I wasn't that into it. It was good enough. I like Loki. As I said, he's the best villain, and we didn't really talk about him during the Avengers, but that was spot on to have him be the villain for Avengers. That was a great decision, because he is the best villain so far in the MCU, and again, other than till we get to 2014, he's really the only good one. So he was good in this. This movie was fine to me. I really have no desire to see it again. It's not terrible, but it didn't really do anything for me.
For me, this movie is so close to the other one for second or third worst. And I think some of the big differences are, like, this movie tries to be much funnier than the first one. And it just didn't work with me. Chris Hemsworth, all these stupid jokes he's saying at the beginning of this movie. And Kat Dennings, who is funny, don't get me wrong. They gave her way more lines in this one, and maybe she's a bigger star now and stuff like that. But her stuff didn't really work for me either. I didn't think this, DC's big rule is, like, they don't do jokes in their movies. And if there was one part of this cinematic universe that I think should lean more towards that, not that I'm saying that's like the best idea in the world or anything, but that should lean more towards that, it's the Thor series and characters. And so that felt different in that way. The only reason I would have to say this one is better is because of the ending. I I was very surprised that they would kill off Loki. And again, what Kurtis said, they never really kill anyone off. But it seemed, I don't know. I bought into it.
The ultimate end didn't really make sense. Like, what did he do with Odin? Like, what happened? Like, it didn't, I mean, I know we're supposed to figure out in Thor 3 or Avengers 2, and that's fine.
If you've never heard 22MW and me talk to Kurtis about the Guardians of the Galaxy, he is very greedy, and he's like, I want info now. I'm going to hold my breath, and I'm going to stomp my feet until you give me every friggin' detail.
Let me give you my thoughts on that. Like, first of all, I'm fine with it in this case. It bothered me a little bit, but I'm fine with it. My rule on that is you don't have to tell me everything, but you have to tell me that you're not going to tell me everything. You know what I mean by that? Like,
No.
like if you're just gonna like not, just leave it out and not really mention anything about it, not kind of make it mysterious, just not say it. That bothers me. If you make it mysterious and kind of hint that you're gonna let us know later, and that this did that, so I'm not that.
And
I'm
Guardians
not
did that too.
What's that?
Guardians did that too.
We'll talk about. I rewatched it. We'll talk about it when we get there.
Okay.
Right?
All right. Yeah. I look forward to that.
Keep in mind, I gave that movie the same rating you did. Gave it the same rating you did.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
The villain in this movie, I think, is maybe the worst villain in all of the movies.
Abomination and Incredible
Okay,
Hulk.
I told you. I wrote Hulk out.
Fair.
I don't even remember. I mean, he just wants to take over the world and get the ether, and that's basically it, right? No real motivation or anything like that.
I mean, if that's no real motivation, I mean, that seems like a pretty big deal. All
right. But I mean, that's a comic book supervillain for you, I guess. But and he looked weird. He didn't really have any emotion. I don't know if it was just because of all that makeup on. Like I've said a million times, and I'll say a million times before, even if you're playing an alien or a robot, you gotta give us something that shows us you're actually a human, so we can relate to you. And that goes good guy or bad guy. I don't even remember who played this guy. Do you remember who played him?
I don't. But
he
was pretty uneventful. Again, what made that movie even that movie could have been just another throwaway movie, I think, if it wasn't for the Loki stuff.
Yeah, like I've said before, the first Thor, not my favorite, not bad. When the Avengers rolled around, I was glad they made it because it established Thor. And maybe I'll feel that way about this movie and after we see a couple more. But after Incredible Hulk, this is probably if we write Incredible Hulk out, this is probably my least favorite of the Swans. But I have only seen it one time. Maybe if I give it another watch, I'll feel differently.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, you ready for some?
So now we're getting into 2014. So we're gonna try to keep the spoilers limited here, right?
But Captain America 2 is out on DVD, Blu-ray, and on demand. So shame on you a little bit if you haven't seen it.
All right. Well, this is why I had to give Iron Man doesn't hold up because Captain America 2 and Guardians of the Galaxy are the two best movies in this franchise. They were both fantastic. Let's start with Cap 2, obviously, because we're going in order here. Again, Chris Evans, great as Captain America. And I really appreciate what this movie tried to do, and what they're trying to do with a lot of these movies is they're trying to take these comic book hero movies and make different movies. They're not saying we're making comic book hero movies. They're saying we're making a fantasy movie. We're making a political thriller. We're making a space adventure. They're taking these comic book movies and making these different genre films out of them instead of saying they all got to be the same. And they're doing a really good job of it. That's not easy to do because, like you said with the Iron Man movies, it can kind of make a movie feel different. I think even in Iron Man, they did a pretty good job. Yes, Iron Man 3 is totally a different director, but I still thought Robert Downey Jr. just grounds that series so much, it's hard to complain too much.
Yeah, and that's what I've said about that, too, is because he has a grasp on the character, I think it could have potentially been a lot worse if it wasn't just Robert Downey Jr. playing Robert Downey Jr. I mean, he played Robert Downey Jr. better than anyone I've ever seen.
He does. And then, again, haven't gotten tired of it yet.
Agreed.
But back to Captain America. The other thing I love about these movies is they really write that shield in where it's almost like its own character, and it's such a ridiculous thing to throw a shield, and it just, I don't know, for whatever reason it works. It never seems overtly goofy. I mean, yeah, the physics of it and some stuff is silly when you think about it, but for whatever reason, it's really awesome. I mean, this movie's just great. again, it doesn't. The Winter Soldier is a good villain, especially when you know the backstory there. Robert Redford character, although even though he's kind of like the Sam Rockwell in that he's not a physical threat, he's definitely a threat. And he does a great job in that role. Then this is just a great movie overall. I wish they had not. My one gripe is the killing Sam Jackson. Not really, and I am going to go ahead and spoil that because we've already spoiled it basically. So that was totally unnecessary. They did it. They just did it to do it again, and it really bothered me. But that's my only gripe about the movie.
I'm such a mark. I bought into that one too. Like they got me hook, line, and sinker because it's with these big name actors, and like I have to imagine at some point they're gonna get cocky and be like, these guys want so much money, and we've got the cash cow here. We can put anyone in these movies. We don't need Sam Jackson. We don't need Robert Downey Jr. So I could see them killing them off at any point. Whether it's to come back 7 movies later or in the same movie, I don't know. But this movie, again, was the game changer for me. This movie, it was the bridge that got me to the other movies. I love the Dark Knight trilogy, and these movies aren't the Dark Knight trilogy, aren't trying to be the Dark Knight trilogy. And I think this movie, it was, again, just the perfect medium between the Dark Knight and some of these more comic booky style movies, which I should have been okay with all along, and I wasn't. And this movie did it for me. Chris Evans is excellent. Scarlett Johansson's actually good in this movie. Yeah. And again, just the feel and the vibe of this movie, and that it is a superhero character that's the lead in this, but it just doesn't feel like your typical superhero movie. And I hope we see a lot more of that. And they're definitely going to have to do that if they're going to keep this going till, I'm 40 years old, like they're planning on it. I say 40 like that's a long way away. Sorry, I think I'm still young. Like I'm 50 years old.
Yeah, I mean, with all these movies, a lot of the premises are ridiculous, as any superhero movie is going to be. And they just do such a good job of making it as realistic or relatable as it possibly can be. And this one took, when you really think about it, these ships go up and they run some algorithm and they start killing people. It's a goofy premise, but it's just put to the side and it becomes more of a political thriller. It becomes more of a freedom versus authority, and it has great characters and great performances, and it's just a great movie. And we're going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy first, and then I'm going to maybe re-rate what my top 3 or 4 are. I really don't know, but maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But anything else on the Winter Soldier?
No, I have a little bit, but I think we're going to talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in a little bit, so I'll just kind of tie it in there.
All right, I'm going to rely on you for that one. So let's get into Guardians of the Galaxy. I rewatched this, and we're going to do we're going to spill over from 22 MW. You can listen to our Guardians of the Galaxy Revisited, featuring me and Tony, and then we're going to do a revisited here. So I saw this movie a second time, and I had the same problems with it, but I liked it even more. So the problems become less. I still didn't like the Ronin character. It's not that I didn't like him; it's that I didn't think they established him. And I like my villains to have established. I don't like them to just be I'm a villain. I know you disagree with me. I tried to come up with something watching this a second time. I didn't even get until the second time I saw this. Like I thought in the first time I saw it, I thought they just kind of some other people thawed him out, and I was confused about. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like
yeah.
The second time you realize like no, nobody thawed him out. He just like sleeps like that or something.
Yeah, that's what I gathered.
Okay, well it still bothers me because it's fine. You sleep how you want to sleep. You're Ronan the Accuser, but
because they have the whole process down. They're putting the makeup on his face. Okay, right, they know what they're doing.
The stuff bothered me a little less about how it didn't really spend a lot of time relating to the other Marvel Universe movies, and we might talk about that later on. But the problems were still there for me. That said, this movie is hysterical. This movie has 5 great leads in the Guardians of the Galaxy. All 5 are awesome. It's got some great side characters. It's got a pretty good story, especially when you consider it's an origin story. if you talk about some of these other origin movies in this, the story is usually kind of weak. In this one, it's really not. It has its issues, but it's the stakes are there, so to speak, which is something that's not always that clear, especially in the original Iron Man. We've already talked about it, so I don't want to. You could go back and listen to kind of our review. But after seeing it again, I think this definitely has to go number one for me. I love this movie. I can't wait till it comes out on DVD so I can buy it and watch it again. I took my kid to see it. He loved it. He does a great Groot impression. Even Groot, just real quick, I heard maybe this was a joke or something, but I saw something where people were upset that he said "We are Groot."
No.
People were upset because he would never say that. He can't say anything but "I am Groot." People were upset that that's unfaithful to the character that he said "We are Groot." And what was one of the best moments of the movie.
Right, yeah, oh yeah. I met somebody that wasn't upset about that, but they were upset because one time he says, "I'm Groot," instead of, he doesn't, I'm like, he has different inflection. It might have just been the way you heard him. It's not...
I will say on the second viewing, this movie did one of my pet peeves, which is, Rocket just not talking like a real person when he's interpreting for Groot, totally repeating what he heard Groot say.
That's
That
typical.
happens in a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Han Solo does the same thing for Chewie in Star Wars. Love Star Wars. Love this movie, but that is one of my pet peeves, and it wasn't done very well in this one either.
What you're saying to me is
it's better than 11%.
Yeah. That's a little annoying to me. Again, the characters are so likable. I gave it leeway. And I guess when you were saying your son does a Groot impression, you didn't mean he found 4 people that want to be his friend.
He found 3 and a girl.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I doubt it, but the girl may be his mom, and you may be the size of 3 people. So, like Curtis said, we've kind of talked about this a lot, especially me, because I've done 2 full shows on it. But if you haven't heard those, I did love this movie. It was, to me, the 4th best comic book movie released in 2014. Captain America Winter Soldier is my number 1 in these movies, and this is my number 2. And but I do think it's an amazing movie. I can't wait to see it again. They took it out of my theater so quick. It was there for 3 weekends, and it's really unfortunate because I'm going to have to wait to who knows how when. Hopefully by Christmas time it'll be out on Blu-ray and I can see it again. Probably not, though, now that I think about it. That sounds way too soon. But
the movie's still number 1. They took it out. That's crazy.
Yep. They took it out, I guess, because TMNT won 2 weeks in a row. It's first week and then it's second week, and then it was gone.
All right, well, we talked about all the films in this series, but there's still a lot to talk about. Unfortunately, we've spent way too much time talking already, so we're actually going to make this a 2-parter, like I said in the beginning, and next week we'll get back into it, and we still got a lot to talk about on the MCU, so join us next week when that's our topic. Until then, see ya!